conversations lead to conversions. Now, having started 2024, I changed my tone a little bit from some of the things that we learned in 2023. And that is not necessarily that conversations lead to conversions, but now it's qualified conversations lead to quick conversions. And there's a distinction there, obviously, between just conversations and just conversions to qualified conversations that lead to quick conversions. I'm going to say that everything you need to know about marketing and selling your high ticket offer can be understood by the nuances of how you answer the following question. Would you sell and market a McLaren the same way you would sell and market a Mazda? Now, I know that seems like a simple question up front, but understanding the subtle nuances of how you answer that question is actually going to be the determination as to whether or not marketing and selling your high ticket thing is going to be easier or harder than the average person. So to more deeply understand this, I want to break this down for you, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a framework for you to consider. I believe that when it comes to this high ticket world, there's only three things that matter. Okay. First is content. Secondly is context. And thirdly is the prospect. I'm going to break each of these down for you right now in relation to the question I was asking. So we have the Mazda, and then we have the McLaren, and then we have, let's just call the regular way of doing it, and the premium way of doing it. And let's just break these down for us to further understand this. So let's look first at the content. And this is our marketing language. This is what we use to market these various aspects of things. If we were selling a Mazda, what is the content that is generally used to sell this type of car? I would say features and generally benefits. So when someone is selling a Mazda, what are we talking about? We're talking about reliability. We're talking about gas efficiency. We're talking about safety. We're talking about basically what it's going to do for them in the day-to-day lives. We've got automatic windows. We've got tilted steer. We've got the heated steering wheels, etc. But ultimately, when we sell a Mazda, we're talking about features and we're talking about benefits. But when we sell a McLaren, are we talking about features and benefits? When you're speaking to a sales manager at an exotic car dealer, are we talking about features and benefits, or are we talking about something else? I'm going to argue, and because I've been through this process several times now, that we're talking about something else. And the sale of the McLaren is more about performance. It's more about power. It's more about this. But I'll wrap this up in one word and say identity. When you are selling an exotic, you are selling to the identity of the prospect. What does that identity include? It includes the status that they're looking for. It's speaking to, let's face it, the ego of the individual. It's speaking to very different content, or very different context to move someone to purchase the McLaren. Now, let's translate this over to the information business world that we're talking about here. When we're talking about a regular transaction, most of us, when we're selling our stuff, are talking about features and benefits. And I will say the number one mistake that I come across when people are selling, how do I know the content is incorrect or the content is like selling a Mazda? When we lead with how-to information. This is the main mistake. And the reason it's the main mistake is because when we lead with how-to information, when we're trying to sell our product or our service, when we're answering the question, how to do something, what's the problem? The prospect is getting the answer of asking, how can I solve this problem for myself? But that is not the prospect that we want. If we're selling a course or a product, sure, they want to ask, how do we overcome this for ourselves? But if we're selling a coaching program, a higher end service where we're involved or a done-for-you execution or something, we don't want them to know how to do it for themselves. That's attracting the wrong person. What we are asking is a different question. We want them to be asking, who can help me do this? So there's difference between how and who. So on the premium side, and when we're talking about the information space, the content shouldn't be how-to information. The content should be what I call the demonstrative why. So for example, if someone was trying to pitch me on AI services, there's two ways that they could pitch me on AI services. Hey, let me show you how to set up your chat GPT and this, that, the other. And let me show you how to like go through all these things so that you can know the buttons to push and this and whatever not. And at the end of the day, here are the prompts and the codes and all this that you need to do. They're basically teaching me how to do it. Friends, if you taught me how to do anything, I would walk out the door. Right? I'm like, that's way too much for me. I don't understand it. But if it was rather than teaching me how to get a result, they demonstrated why it was important to involve AI in my business, and then through the demonstration showed me the results that were possible, I'm in. You're hired. Do it for me. So that's the first thing we need to note is the content. Now let's look at the context. So let's start with the Mazda. What is the way that you would, the context around how you would sell and market a Mazda? Yeah, you might put ads on the newspaper, you might put ads on social channels or whatever, but that transaction typically happens in a showroom at one of those like open desks. You know what I'm talking about? It's where they cram all their salespeople into an open desk floor and you're sitting beside the car and you come in and you have a sit down and he's breaking out his computer and he's walking through all the process with you, et cetera. And at the end of the day, if you're convinced and you can qualify for financing or whatever, you end up buying the car. But what is the context of a sale of a car that's $500,000 or more? It's not happening in a showroom over an open desk somewhere. It is happening on the racetrack. It is happening at the golf course. It is happening through text. Right? The last two McLaren's that I bought over a text message. I never saw the car. I never even went to a showroom. I didn't care. I knew the car that I want. I ended up texting sales manager. And then 3 days later, an enclosed flatbed shows up in front of my house, drops the car off, drives away, hands me the paperwork, and it's a done deal. It's a very different transactional experience in terms of the context. So let's translate this now over to the information business that we're talking about. What is the context of a sale in the regular how-to information world? It's what we would just call the traditional funnel. Right? So this is where we do webinars and challenges and lead magnets and whatever else that's part of that world, because that's how we were taught to sell low-ticket information courses and programs. But the context is very different. The person who's prepared to spend high dollar on our service and high dollar on our coaching, and it's the same, it's the McLaren owner, is not going to sit through the webinar and is not going to opt in for some lead magnet and will most likely not read a 300-page book. This is a different context. I say that the context then for this buyer is the fast track, because it just removes all the stuff that ideal prospect would generally go through and just puts the minimal things that are in the process here. So if that is true about content and context, then the last portion of this is the prospect. And the question is then, what makes a qualified prospect? In my world, two things. First is, can they afford it? And the second thing that qualifies the prospect is, how urgent or great is the need? And so I propose to you then that the higher they can afford something and the more urgent or greater the need, the easier the transaction will be. This makes sense, right? If they can afford it and they have a great need and we can provide the solution to that need, then they're a qualified prospect and the transaction happens much faster. And again, this is just us understanding the difference between an information seeker and a solution seeker. But the point I'm trying to make with all this is that most people's problems when it comes to marketing, and there's no fault to their own, this is just how we were taught, But most people's problems when it comes to selling our premium product, our McLaren, is that we're trying to sell McLarens to Mazda people using Mazda content and Mazda context. And as we're doing that, we're getting on the phone with people and we're wondering, oh, well, why they're not so qualified? What's going on here? That's not working, or they can't afford it, or that's not urgent. And then we fall back on our old patterns of marketing, which is Mazda marketing, as I like to call it. And again, if you drive a Mazda, please, this is not, I'm just using it for an example. But the idea here is we've got to understand the right prospect. And here's the last thing I'll just throw in the mix. But the other part of it is, here's what people don't realize. Conversations with potential McLaren owners, these are sales conversations now, are very different than conversations with potential Mazda buyers. The actual conversation to be held. And that's why traditional sales training of overcoming objections and building the gap and all that stuff. I highly doubt that there's been a supercar buyer who walked into and spoke to a sales manager at an exotic car shop, and the exotic car shop went through the traditional sales process of like, so Amanda, tell me why you're dreaming about owning one of these cars. And then they stretch the gap further. What would life be like for you if you could see yourself in one? That's aspirational selling. Aspirational selling doesn't work to the McLaren buyer. They don't need to aspire towards it. They just want the damn car. And yet we're having aspirational conversations to be like, oh, I want you to imagine this. Oh, can I overcome the objection of price and this and delays and that? And that type of selling does not work when we're selling McLarens. Here's the thing. Sales is all about leadership. It is who is leading the conversation. Now, if we're dealing with someone who's aspirational, us leading a conversation is very easy. It's like, hey, Betsy, how are you? Great. I control the conversation because you want the result that I can apparently provide. So I'm going to lead the conversation. I'm going to lead the interview. You're going to answer my questions, and hopefully I can bring you to a sale at the end of the day. However, when we're talking about McLaren sales, the type of people who buy McLarens, they are already in their head leaders. They're A-type personalities, and they like to control conversations. So the first thing my sales team had to adjust to when they did this is I would listen in on their sales calls, and they're the ones being interviewed. And the prospect's like, okay, well, get to it. Tell me what this is. How much does this? I don't care about all that shit. Just tell me how much this costs. Tell me what the program looks like. And it would catch my salespeople on the back of their heels. And they're like, whoa. I've got to ask you questions, but I don't know how to do this. I can't lead this call anymore. And it threw them all array. So we had to institute new things to realize, hey, McLaren buyers, they want to lead calls. So how do you then lead the call? Because sales is all about leadership, and the person who leads the call is the one who wins at the end of it. And so we had to, it wasn't about objection handling or any tricky sales or anything like that. It's taking leadership. So when I lead my calls, and I don't do this much anymore, but people will get on the call, and the first thing I say is, okay, hey, why are we having this call? What happened recently that caused you to want to have a call with me to solve this problem? And immediately I lead the conversation. And then I move into a questionnaire interviewer mode. I say, look, I'm Amanda, I'm going to solve all of your lead generation problems. But you need to prove to me that if I could flood your calendar with sales calls, that you have the ability to close them. Because the last thing I want is for you to join my program. I flood your calendar with calls. You don't close any calls. And now you're going to blame me for bad leads. And really it means bad sales. So before we even take a step further, can you prove to me that your sales ratio is at least 33%? Otherwise, I can't have you in this program because you're going to be mad at me and I can't have that. So I'm leading the call. They fall back and say, well, let me show you my sales numbers then. Okay, show me your sales numbers then. Let's have this conversation. But do you see now when we revert back to the original question that I asked at the beginning of this, of understanding the nuance of how to answer, would you sell and market a McLaren the same way you would sell and market a Mazda, makes sense now. Because they are different content, different context, different prospects, and different conversations. And so we go back all the way to the very top and say conversations lead to conversions, but now we understand that qualified conversations lead to quick conversions, This should start giving you a little bit of food for thought about how you approach the marketing world. And we have to undo a lot of the stuff we were taught because, again, the main problem I see with most people marketing is that you're selling a McLaren. Maybe not the same price point, but you're selling a high-end offer, a premium offer, but our content, our context, and our prospects and our conversations are all Mazda conversations. And we wonder, why is it not working? So once we can understand that, then we can start moving to understand a little bit more about how to really make this work. So pardon my little soapbox rant there. These were just my musings from this week, but I wanted for people to really get and understand what is happening here.